In this lesson, we'll learn more about circle graphs. Here we have those different parts of a circle graph. Sometimes a circle graph is also called a pie graph. So if you're setting up a circle graph within Microsoft Excel, for instance, you'll see it listed as a pie graph. Each graph will have a graph title, and the title tells what the graph is representing or showing. So the graph down below, and this circle graph down below, this one's a three-dimensional circle graph. The title of this is The Perfect Pizza. The Perfect Pizza. Sectors, each sector is one part of the whole circle. So the whole circle is here, what I'm circling here, plus the whole circle, and each of these are sectors. So we've got a blue sector here, a yellow sector here, and a red sector here, each representing a different part of the circle. If we put all three of those parts together, we would get the whole, or 100% of the circle. Now, if we have sector labels here, it says each label tells what the sector represents. So the yellow represents 15% comes of the perfect pizza is because of the sauce. 55% of the perfect pizza is because of the cheese that's on there. And 30% people say that the perfect pizza really has to have the right kind of pepperoni. Circle graphs are just a way to represent data. Let's take a look at another example. Before moving on, think about these three things here. Graph title, the sectors and sector labels as to what might be missing from this next example. As we see here, we have another example, and then says there are 12 boys and 18 girls in a class. Is there a title for this circle graph? Yeah, it says students in the class. Now, it does have this over here where it shows that the blue is representing the boys, and the maroon color here is representing the girls. And then so we do have two sectors because we have two different things that we have for our pie graph here and for our circle graph, but what we're missing are those sector labels. The blue represented the what again? The boys. And how many boys were there? 12. So we'll go ahead and write 12 boys in there. The other thing is we'll label the other one as well. And how many girls were there? There were 18 girls. Now, the circle graph represented all the students. How many total students were there? The total students was 30. So the reason that it looks like this here is partly because, and it's because 12 out of the 30 are boys. And 18 out of the 30 are girls. If we had half of 30, it would be 15. And then so if we had divided our whole into half, it would have been 15. That's why 18/30ths, this seems to look pretty good for 18/30ths, because it would not just be 15. This other portion right here that I'm going around right now would be those three other girls. And that's 12 there. That's the rest of those students in the class. Here's some steps of how to make a circle graph. First off, obviously, draw a circle. And the whole circle represents all the data, or the whole. So in our previous example, that's why I had 12 boys plus 18 girls was those 30 boys and girls. In this case, since we're talking about boys and girls, we're going to separate our whole into two parts. Now, to separate our whole into two parts, we have to look at those fractions there. So 12/30ths represented the boys, and 18/30ths represented the girls. That way, we knew that when we were drawing our circle, we knew as to how we were going to separate that circle. We knew that half of that circle would have been 15. And then so if we're separating into boys and girls, then for boys, we'd probably separate something like this here, where we're talking about this section for the boys and the other section for the girls. You want to try to make it as close as possible. And the last thing in the last little bullet point said, hey, label each sector and give your graph a title. And then so we had students in the class. Those are those different steps to make that circle graph. I think the other one looked nicer than the one I just sketched, but you get the idea. Here's a survey question that was asked. What's your favorite lunch? And then so we had pizza. 10 people said, and they only got to choose one. 10 people said, pizza's my favorite lunch. 3 people said, chicken's my favorite lunch. 7 people said, oh, if I could have any lunch, I'd want spaghetti. And some people were all, I just want a sandwich. And so to draw our circle graph, first off, we need to look at this here, and we need to figure out as to how many people that we surveyed. 10 plus 3 is 13, plus 7 is 20. And then if we add 5 to that, we get 25. And then so that gives us the total number of people that we ended up surveying. Now the reason that is important is that we're going to express each of these pieces for our circle graph as a fraction. And then so if we have pizza here as being 10, 10 of the 25, 10 out of 25, hey, we can write that as a fraction, where it is that we put 10 in the numerator and 25 in the denominator. What fraction of the people like chicken? 3 out of 25. It's a little hard for me to see that, so maybe I'll switch colors. For spaghetti, the fractional part is 7 out of 25. And finally, for sandwich, we have 5 out of 25. Now, if we added all those fractional pieces up, we should get the whole, or 1. And then so if you see here, 10 plus 3 is 13, plus 7 is 20, plus 5 is 25. That is 25/5, which does equal 1 whole. Now, let's look at this here and think about this. We've got 10 25ths. Now, if half of 25 is what? Did you say about 12, 12 and a half? Now, if that's the case, then 10 25ths is not going to be as much as a half. In fact, we could even write the simplest form of this here. 10 25ths is, let's see, think. I have to think too. Is 2 out of 5. 2 out of 5 is actually 0.4, or if we write that in percentages, it would be 40%. But you might not know about percentages yet. So 2 out of the 5 parts, if we were to think about a circle, and if we were to divide it into 5 parts, 2 out of those 5 would end up being shaded, not quite a half. So that's the type of thing that we'd have to do for each of those other sections as well. 5 out of 25 is just 1/5. So it should be half as large as, for the sandwich, it should be half as large as the pizza. So we try to make them as close as possible. Let's take a look and see our circle graph, and we'll fill in those missing parts. Here's a circle graph representing that data. As you see here, we've got pizza, and we are talking about pizza and talking about pizza and talking about pizza, and we have to go ahead and label those different parts. So we had pizza, we had chicken, we had spaghetti, and we had sandwich. Do you remember each of those numbers that were associated with that? I remember pizza was 10, I remember sandwich was 5, and then I have to go look up the other ones. They were 7 for spaghetti and 3 for chicken. And then so this makes sense as this section of the circle graph is bigger than the 5 here. This 10 right here looks to be about double the 5, and the 3 is definitely less than the 5 there. The only other thing that we're missing for our circle graph is a title. And then so we'll go ahead and write out favorite lunch for our title. And that's all you need to know about circle graphs. You could answer different questions about these circle graphs. For instance, you could say, how many students liked pizza and sandwiches the most? And at that point, you would look at the 10 plus the 5, and then you would say, 15 students. Or you could say, how many more students like spaghetti than chicken? And then you look at your circle graph, you take 7, you subtract off 3, and you say 7 minus 3 is 4. And so there's many different questions that we can use and see with circle graphs or with graphs in general. Circle graphs are just another way to represent the data, where this is the whole, and we have sectioned off parts of the whole. 10/25 of the circle is representing that pizza there.